My son-in-law said fasting will teach you gratitude. The court summons taught him something else entirely. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. I was 75 years old when I learned that family can cut deeper than any stranger ever could. Standing in my cramped studio apartment in Queens, the late afternoon sun barely filtering through the grimy window, I held that court summons with trembling fingers. The paper felt heavier than it should have. The address was mine. The plaintiff was my own son-in-law. How did it come to this? The sounds of Jackson Heights hummed beyond my walls, children playing in the courtyard, music spilling from open windows, life happening everywhere except inside my four walls. I had become a ghost in my own existence, floating through days that felt identical and meaningless. My arthritis made every morning a battle. Simple tasks like opening a jar of jam or buttoning my cardigan took longer than they used to. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the ache that had settled in my chest months ago and never left. I remember the exact moment it began. I was struggling with 3 heavy grocery bags outside the Key Food on Northern Boulevard. The plastic handles cut into my palms, and my back screamed with each step. When I saw my son-in-law Marcus getting out of his shiny black BMW, a car I had helped him buy, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, someone to help. "Marcus!" I called out, trying to wave without dropping the bags. He looked up, saw me struggling, and walked over with that expression I had grown to recognize but never wanted to acknowledge. It wasn't concern. It wasn't love. It was inconvenience wrapped in a thin layer of obligation. "What are you doing, Mom?" he asked, not moving to take the bags. "Just getting some groceries. Could you help me carry these up?" That's when he said it. Those words that would echo in my mind for months afterward. "Fasting will teach you gratitude, Mom. Maybe if you didn't buy so much unnecessary food, you wouldn't need help carrying it." I stood there on that sidewalk, watching him walk away toward his luxury car, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, not yet, but cracked like old porcelain, hairline fractures spreading through what was left of my hope. The smell of lemon zest had always meant home to me. When my daughter Sarah was little, I would make lemon cookies every Sunday after church. The kitchen in our old Brooklyn apartment would fill with that bright, clean scent, and she would stand on a wooden stool beside me, flour dusting her dark curls, asking a million questions about everything and nothing. "Mama, why do lemons smell like sunshine?" "Because they carry a little piece of heaven inside them, baby girl." Now, standing in my sparse kitchen, I could barely remember the last time I had smelled lemon zest. The small bottle of lemon extract sat unused in my cabinet. When had I stopped baking? When had I stopped trying to create moments of joy? I looked at the faded family photos arranged on my wall, pictures spanning 40 years of birthdays, graduations, holidays. There was Sarah's high school graduation, her face glowing with pride as I stood beside her in my best dress, the one I had saved 3 months to buy. There was her wedding day, me crying happy tears as I watched her dance with her new husband. There were the grandchildren, little Emma and Michael, gap-toothed grins as they opened presents I had worked overtime to afford. When had those grins stopped being for me? That night, after Marcus's cruel words, I sat in my worn armchair and really looked at those photos. In every single one, I was giving something: my money, my time, my love, my strength. But when was the last time I had received anything in return except expectations for more? Let me tell you about the giving, because there was so much of it, spread across so many years, that sometimes I wonder how I didn't collapse under the weight of it all. I was 19 when Sarah was born. Her father left before her first birthday, just disappeared one morning like morning mist, leaving behind only empty promises and unpaid bills. I was alone with a baby in Brooklyn, working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I cleaned offices in Manhattan. In the evenings, I watched Mrs. Rodriguez's children while she worked her night shift at the hospital. On weekends, I ironed clothes for busy families in Park Slope. Every dollar I earned went toward giving Sarah the life I never had. When she was 8 and wanted piano lessons, I sold my grandmother's jewelry to pay for them. When she was 12 and needed a dress for the school dance, I worked double shifts for a month to buy her something beautiful from Macy's. When she got accepted to Brooklyn College, I took out loans I'm still paying off to cover her tuition. "Mom, you don't have to sacrifice everything for me," she would say sometimes, usually when she caught me counting pennies at the kitchen table, or when she found me crying over bills late at night. "Family first, baby girl," I would tell her. "That's what love looks like." I believed that with my whole heart. I believed that love was sacrifice, that love was giving until you had nothing left, that love was never saying no, never setting boundaries, never asking for anything in return. When Sarah met Marcus in her senior year of college, I was so happy to see her smile again. She had been dating a boy who treated her poorly, and Marcus seemed like a gift from heaven. He was charming, ambitious, studying business administration with big dreams of starting his own company. He called me Mom from their second date. "Your daughter is so lucky to have you," he told me over dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Bensonhurst. "She's told me how much you sacrificed for her education. That's real love." I glowed under his praise. Finally, someone who understood. Someone who appreciated what I had given. After they married, Marcus struggled to get his business off the ground. He had ideas, so many ideas, but they seemed to require constant financial investment. First, it was money for equipment, then for office space, then for inventory, then for marketing. "Mom, could you help us out just this once?" Sarah would ask, her voice small and apologetic. Marcus is so close to making it work. And I did help. Again and again and again. I cashed in my small retirement fund. I took out a reverse mortgage on the little house I had finally managed to buy after years of renting. I gave them my Social Security checks, living on whatever I could earn from part-time cleaning jobs, even though my knees screamed in protest with every scrub. The months turned into years. Marcus's business ventures failed one after another, but somehow the requests for money never stopped. They moved to a beautiful house in Astoria, a house my money had helped buy. They drove nice cars, wore nice clothes, took vacations to places I had only seen in magazines. Meanwhile, I moved from our family house to a smaller apartment, then to an even smaller one, then finally to this studio in Queens, where the walls are thin and the neighbors loud and the radiator clanks all winter long. "Just temporary, Mom," Sarah assured me when I had to downsize again. "Once Marcus's cryptocurrency investment pays off, we'll get you set up somewhere really nice." Cryptocurrency. That was his latest obsession. He had taken nearly $30,000 of my money I had saved for medical emergencies, for a decent burial, for peace of mind, and invested it in something called Bitcoin. He showed me charts and graphs on his laptop, his eyes bright with the fever of certain wealth. "This is going to make us millions, Mom. You'll never have to worry about money again." The Bitcoin investment, like everything else, disappeared. But Marcus always had an explanation. The market was volatile. Timing was everything. Success required patience and more investment. Always more investment. But it wasn't just the money. Though losing my life savings was devastating enough, it was the way they made me feel when I needed them. My 73rd birthday fell on a Tuesday. I had hints that something special was planned, whispered phone calls that stopped when I entered the room, knowing looks between Sarah and Marcus. I bought myself a new dress from the thrift store on Roosevelt Avenue, something cheerful in blue with tiny flowers. I spent the morning cleaning my apartment until it sparkled, just in case they decided to visit. I waited all day. At 6 o'clock, I called Sarah. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. I tried Marcus. Same thing. I tried calling Emma and Michael, my grandchildren, but their phones went straight to voicemail too. At 8 o'clock, Sarah finally called back. "Oh, Mom, happy birthday. I'm so sorry. Marcus had a business crisis and we're dealing with some urgent stuff. Rain check on celebrating?" The rain check never came. The following year, my 74th birthday, I didn't buy a new dress. I didn't clean the apartment. I didn't wait by the phone. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and watched old movies until I fell asleep in my chair. This year, my 75th, they forgot entirely. No call, no card, nothing. 2 days later, Sarah texted me, "Hope you had a nice birthday, Mom. Sorry things have been crazy. Things have been crazy." As if I were just another item on an endless to-do list that kept getting pushed to the bottom. The loneliness of those forgotten birthdays was nothing compared to what happened with my health scare. It was a Tuesday morning in February, the coldest day of the year, with wind that cut through my thin coat like razor blades. I was walking to the pharmacy to pick up my arthritis medication when suddenly the sidewalk seemed to tilt sideways. The last thing I remember was thinking I needed to call someone, but realizing I didn't know who that someone would be. I woke up in Elmhurst Hospital with a young nurse checking my blood pressure. She had kind eyes and spoke to me in both English and Spanish, assuming correctly that I would find comfort in hearing my neighbor's language, even though I only spoke English. "Do you have family we should call?" she asked. I gave her Sarah's number and Marcus's number. I even gave her Emma's number, though she was only 16 and probably couldn't leave school. I waited in that hospital bed for 6 hours. The doctors wanted to keep me overnight for observation. My blood pressure had spiked dangerously high, and I had hit my head when I fell. They were worried about a concussion. Sarah finally arrived at 7 in the evening, still wearing her work clothes and carrying an expression of deep inconvenience. "Mom, what happened? The hospital said you fainted. I was walking to the pharmacy and just collapsed. The doctor thinks it might be related to stress and not eating enough." Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at it while I was talking. "That's Marcus," she said, typing a response. "He's stuck in traffic. Look, Mom, are you okay? Because I really need to get home. Emma has a school presentation tomorrow and I promised I'd help her practice." I stared at her, my own daughter, standing beside my hospital bed, asking if I was okay like she was asking about the weather. "The doctor wants me to stay overnight," I said quietly. "Oh," another buzz from her phone. "Well, you'll be fine, right? I mean, it's just observation, and you know how scared Emma gets before presentations." She left me there, in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and fear, surrounded by the moans and cries of other forgotten people. I spent the night listening to the beep of machines and wondering when I had become such a burden that my own daughter couldn't spend one night making sure I didn't die alone. But the worst was still coming, the discovery that would finally break whatever thin strand of hope I had been clinging to. It happened 3 months after my hospital stay. I was trying to pay my rent and realized my checking account balance was lower than it should be, much lower. I called the bank, thinking there had been some mistake. There was no mistake. There were withdrawals, regular withdrawals, always for round amounts. $300 here, $500 there, sometimes $1,000. The bank representative read me the authorization codes, all of them linked to an account I didn't recognize. "Ma'am, it appears these withdrawals were authorized using your online banking access. Do you share your banking passwords with anyone?" I did. Sarah had convinced me to give her access, just in case of emergency, and Marcus had helped me set up the online banking system after I complained about having to walk to the bank every time I needed cash. That night, I printed out 6 months of bank statements at the library on Junction Boulevard. Line by line, I traced where my money had gone. Nearly $8,000, disappearing steadily from my account. Money I had been saving for my prescription medications. Money I had set aside for my monthly rent. Money I needed for food, for heat, for the basic dignity of taking care of myself. I sat in the library until closing time, staring at those numbers, those dates, those betrayals recorded in black and white. An elderly man at the next computer kept glancing over at me with concern. "Are you all right, Senora?" he asked in accented English. I couldn't answer him. How do you tell a stranger that your own family has been stealing from you? How do you admit that the people you would die for are slowly killing you? When I got home that night, I called Sarah. "Hi, Mom. What's up?" "I'm just putting the kids to bed." "Sarah, I need to ask you about something. There have been withdrawals from my account. Large ones. Do you know anything about that?" Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Mom, are you sure? Maybe you're confused. You know how you sometimes forget things. Forget things. As if I were some senile old woman who couldn't remember where she put her keys, instead of someone who had been tracking every penny for 55 years. The bank showed me the records, Sarah. $8,000. Gone. More silence. Then, "Mom, I think we need to have Marcus talk to you about this. He handles all our finances." "I don't really understand that stuff." She hung up before I could respond. Marcus called me an hour later. Mom, Sarah told me you're worried about your bank account. Look, I know this might be hard to understand, but I've been managing some investments for you. Remember the Bitcoin we talked about? Well, I had to move some money around to minimize your tax liability. It's all perfectly legal, I promise. Marcus, you took money from my account without telling me. I took money that was going to be wasted sitting in a low-interest checking account and put it to work for all of us. This is what families do, Mom. We look out for each other. I need that money for my rent, for my medications. And you'll have it back with interest as soon as the investment matures. But Mom, I have to ask, are you taking your memory supplements? Because Sarah is worried that you're getting confused about our financial arrangements. Our financial arrangements. As if I were a business partner instead of the woman who had funded his dreams for 10 years. I want the money back in my account by Friday, Marcus. Mom, that's not how investments work. You can't just withdraw money from Bitcoin like it's a savings account, but don't worry, I'll make sure you have enough cash for your immediate needs. He sent me $200, $200 out of the $8,000 he had taken. That night, I sat in my kitchen and cried for the first time in years. Not the quiet tears of disappointment or loneliness that had become my companions. These were the raw, ugly sobs of someone who had finally understood the truth. I was not loved. I was used. I was not family. I was an ATM with emotions. I was not their mother. I was their mark. The teacup in my hands, one of the few nice things I had left from a set my own mother had given me, seemed to grow heavier and heavier as I cried. My grip loosened. The cup fell to the linoleum floor and shattered into a dozen pieces, the sound sharp and final in the quiet kitchen. I stared at those broken pieces and saw myself reflected in each one, fractured, destroyed, scattered across the floor like my hopes and dreams and foolish belief that love was enough. Should I call them back? Should I scream and demand my money? Should I threaten to cut them off? Or should I keep forgiving, keep hoping? Keep believing that somewhere underneath their greed and selfishness, they still loved me. As I picked up the pieces of my mother's teacup, cutting my finger on a sharp edge, I realized I didn't know how to stop being a victim. I had been one for so long that I couldn't remember what it felt like to stand up for myself. That night, I packed all our family photos into a cardboard box. I couldn't bear to look at them anymore. All those smiling faces, all those moments of happiness that felt like lies now. I shoved the box into my bedroom closet and tried to pretend those 40 years of love and sacrifice had never happened. But pretending is exhausting work, and I was already so very tired. The next morning, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She was old. When had I gotten so old? Her hair was thin and gray, her skin papery and pale. Her eyes were the worst part. Empty, defeated, the eyes of someone who had given up. "Who are you?" I whispered to my reflection. She didn't answer. When I confronted them about the money the following week, their reactions were everything I had feared and nothing I had prepared for. I had asked them to come to my apartment on Saturday afternoon. I wanted to talk face to face, to give them a chance to explain, to make this right. I even cleaned the apartment and made coffee, falling back into old habits of hospitality even when I was preparing to confront thieves. Sarah arrived first, looking nervous and defensive. She sat on the edge of my couch like she was ready to run. "Mom, before you say anything, I want you to know that we did this because we love you. Everything Marcus did was to help secure your financial future." Marcus came in 10 minutes later with the children. Bringing Emma and Michael felt like emotional manipulation. But I was so hungry to see them that I pushed down my anger and hugged them both. "Grandma, Dad says you're mad at us," Emma said, her 13-year-old face pinched with worry. "I'm not mad at you, sweetheart. I just need to talk to your parents about something." Marcus sent the children to play in my small bedroom while we talked. The space felt cramped with all of us there. Me in my armchair, Sarah on the couch, Marcus pacing by the window like a caged animal. "Marcus," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "I need you to explain where my money went." He launched into the same explanation about Bitcoin and investments and tax liability. He had charts on his phone. He showed me screenshots of cryptocurrency values. He used words like portfolio diversification and market volatility, like they were magic spells that would make me forget he had stolen from me. "Mom, you have to trust us," Sarah said when Marcus finished his presentation. "We would never hurt you. You took $8,000 from my account without my permission. We had your permission." Marcus's voice was rising now, and I could hear the children go quiet in the other room. "You gave us access to your accounts. You said we could help manage your finances. I said you could help me pay bills online, not steal my savings. It's not stealing when it's family." Sarah stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Do you know how much money we've spent taking care of you over the years? How much time we've invested in making sure you were okay?" I stared at her. My daughter. The little girl I had sacrificed everything for. Standing in my living room and telling me that love was an investment with expected returns. "You've never spent money taking care of me," I said quietly. "I've been taking care of you for 30 years. That's not fair, Mom. We invited you to dinner sometimes. We helped you move apartments. We've been there for you. When? When have you been there for me?" Silence. Long and uncomfortable and telling. Marcus tried a different approach. He sat down next to Sarah and took her hand in a theatrical gesture of solidarity. "Mom, I can see you're upset, and I understand why. But you have to look at the bigger picture here. Sarah and I are building something. This cryptocurrency investment is going to pay off big time. We're talking about millions of dollars, Mom. Millions. When that happens, we'll buy you a beautiful house. We'll hire someone to take care of you. We'll make sure you never want for anything again. I want for things right now, Marcus. I want for my money that you stole. I want for rent money and grocery money and medication money." "You're being dramatic," Sarah said. "We've never let you go without food or medicine. Because I've been living on crackers and peanut butter for 2 months so I could save money for my blood pressure medication." The children had crept to the bedroom doorway and were listening now. Emma's eyes were wide with confusion. Michael was sucking his thumb, something he hadn't done in years. "See what you're doing?" Marcus hissed. "You're scaring the kids with this emotional manipulation." Emotional manipulation. The man who had stolen my life savings was accusing me of emotional manipulation. "I want you to leave," I said, standing up on shaking legs. "All of you. Get out." "Mom, don't do this," Sarah said, but she was already reaching for her purse. "Don't make this into some big family drama. Get out." They left, the children confused and crying, Sarah slamming the door behind them. I stood in my empty apartment listening to their footsteps disappear down the hallway, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt angry, but the anger didn't last long. By evening, the familiar guilt crept back in. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe they really were trying to help me, and I was too old and stubborn to understand modern financial planning. I almost called Sarah to apologize. The text that came at midnight stopped me. It was from Marcus. "Mom, we're disappointed in how you handled things today. We think it's best if we take a break from family visits until you can approach this situation more rationally. The kids were really upset by your accusations." A break from family visits. As if seeing my grandchildren was a privilege they granted me rather than a relationship I had earned through years of love and sacrifice. I read that text message 12 times before I finally understood what it really meant. You will accept our abuse, or you will be alone. But there was something else, too. A tiny spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Defiance. Maybe alone was better than this. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I said no. Marcus called asking for money to cover Emma's school fees, $500 for some educational trip to Washington, D.C. In the old days, I would have found the money somehow, even if it meant skipping meals or rationing my medications. "No," I said. "What?" "No, Marcus. I don't have $500 to give you, but Emma is really excited about this trip. She'll be devastated if she can't go. Then you'll have to find another way to pay for it." "Mom, this is your granddaughter we're talking about. And you're talking to your mother-in-law who no longer has savings because you stole them." I hung up the phone. He called back immediately. I didn't answer. He called 5 more times that day. I disconnected my phone. For the first time in years, my apartment was quiet. Really quiet. No ringing phone, no demanding voices, no guilt weighing down every breath I took. I made myself tea in a new mug I bought from the dollar store. Nothing fancy, just plain white ceramic. I sat in my armchair and listened to the sounds of life outside my window. Children playing, music drifting from neighbors' apartments, the distant rumble of the subway carrying people to jobs and homes and lives that belonged to them. When was the last time I had owned my own life? That evening, I did something that felt revolutionary. I cooked myself a real dinner. Not crackers and peanut butter or instant soup from a packet. I went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for arroz con pollo, a recipe I hadn't made in years because it seemed wasteful to cook for one person. As the saffron bloomed in the hot oil and filled my kitchen with golden fragrance, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Peace. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time since I could remember. No dreams about empty bank accounts or disappointed grandchildren or angry phone calls. Just deep, restful sleep. The next morning, I walked to the community center on Northern Boulevard. I had passed it hundreds of times but never gone inside. The lobby was bright and welcoming, with murals painted by local artists and bulletin boards covered with announcements for senior exercise classes and legal aid clinics. "Can I help you?" asked a young woman at the reception desk. She had kind eyes and spoke with an accent I couldn't place. "I think I need to talk to someone about legal matters," I said. "Financial matters." "Oh, perfect timing. Mr. Rodriguez, our legal aid volunteer, is here today. He helps seniors with all kinds of issues. Would you like to make an appointment?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from a man about my age who listened without judgment as I explained what had happened. He took notes, asked questions, and never once made me feel stupid or confused or dramatic. "Mrs. Martinez," he said when I finished talking, "what your son-in-law did is called financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. It's a crime in New York State, and there are legal remedies available to you. A crime, not a family misunderstanding or a business arrangement gone wrong. A crime. What would I need to do?" I asked. "First, we'll help you change all your banking passwords and set up new accounts they can't access. Then we'll document the unauthorized withdrawals and file a complaint with the district attorney's office. We can also help you pursue civil remediation to recover your stolen funds." Civil remediation. Legal words that meant I might get my money back. How much would this cost? Nothing. Our legal aid services are free for seniors. I sat in that community center office and signed papers that felt like signing my independence. For the first time in my adult life, I was taking action to protect myself instead of sacrificing myself for others. Walking home that afternoon, I noticed things I hadn't seen in years. The way sunlight caught in the windows of the apartment buildings. The sound of different languages mixing together on the busy sidewalks. The smell of food from restaurants representing a dozen countries. I had been living in this neighborhood for 3 years, but I had never really seen it. I had been too focused on my problems, too absorbed in my family drama, to notice that I was surrounded by life and possibility. That evening, there was a knock on my door. For a moment, my heart jumped with familiar hope. Maybe it was Sarah coming to apologize. Maybe it was the grandchildren, missing their grandmother. It was my neighbor Rosa from the apartment next door. She was holding a covered dish and wearing a worried expression. "Señora Elena," she said, "I haven't seen you in days. Are you okay?" I realized that in all the time I had lived next to Rosa, we had never had a real conversation. We exchanged polite greetings in the hallway, helped each other with heavy packages, but I had been too ashamed of my situation to let anyone get close. "I've been better," I admitted. "Would you like some company? I made too much Pernil, and my husband is working late." I almost said no. Old habits are hard to break. But something in her warm eyes made me step aside and let her in. Rosa looked around my sparse apartment without judgment. She heated up the pork she had brought and made fresh coffee while I sat at my small table feeling awkward and grateful in equal measure. "You know," she said as we ate, "I hear you crying sometimes at night, through the walls. I've wanted to check on you, but I wasn't sure if you wanted privacy or company." I started crying then, right there at my kitchen table, in front of this woman who was practically a stranger, but was showing me more kindness than my own family had in years. "My family," I began, and then stopped. "How do you explain that the people who are supposed to love you have been slowly destroying you?" "Ah," Rosa said, nodding knowingly. Family can be the deepest blessing and the sharpest knife. She didn't push me to explain more. She just sat with me while I cried, occasionally patting my hand or refilling my coffee cup. When I finally stopped sobbing, she told me about her own struggles with her adult children. My son, he moved to Florida last year, promised to visit every few months. I haven't seen him since Christmas. My daughter lives in the Bronx, but she's always too busy with her own life to call her mommy. Sometimes I think we raise them to leave us, you know? But they don't steal from you, I said bitterly. Rosa raised her eyebrows, but didn't seem shocked. No, mija, they don't steal my money, but they steal my time and my peace and my expectations. Maybe it's all different versions of the same thing. That night, after Rosa went home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt understood. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Mr. Rodriguez at the community center. Mrs. Martinez, we've made some progress on your case. The district attorney's office has agreed to investigate, and we've frozen the accounts where your stolen funds were transferred. But I need to prepare you. Your family is going to fight this. They're going to try to make you feel guilty for involving the law. He was right. The call came the next day. Sarah, crying hysterically. Mom, how could you do this? The police called Marcus at work. At work? Do you know how humiliating this is? His coworkers heard everything. Good, I said, surprising myself with my calm tone. Maybe someone should know what he did. What he did? Mom? He tried to help you. He was investing your money to make it grow. He stole $8,000 from my account without permission. It wasn't stealing. God, Mom, you're 75 years old. Do you really think you should be managing your own investments? The condescension in her voice was like a slap. I had been managing money since before she was born. I had worked 3 jobs to put her through college. I had bought and sold property, paid taxes, navigated bureaucracy, and handled my own finances for 55 years. But suddenly, because I was 75, I was too old to control my own money. I'm old enough to know the difference between investing and theft, I said. Mom, please drop this legal nonsense. We're family. We should handle this privately. Marcus is willing to set up a payment plan to return your money gradually. I don't want a payment plan from someone who stole from me. I want my money back, and I want it back now. You're being unreasonable. I'm being self-protective, something I should have learned to do years ago. I hung up the phone and realized I felt lighter than I had in months. But they weren't done trying to manipulate me. The next strategy was emotional blackmail through the grandchildren. Emma called me crying. Grandma, why are you being mean to Dad? He says you might send him to jail for trying to help you. My heart broke a little. Sweetie, I'm not being mean. I'm trying to fix a problem. But Dad says if he goes to jail, we won't have any money and we might lose our house. Is that what you want? The house that my money had helped buy. The house where I wasn't welcome anymore because I had dared to ask for my stolen savings back. Emma, honey, your father made some bad choices. I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. But Grandma, we love you. Doesn't that mean anything? Love. They kept using that word like it justified everything. Like love meant I should accept being robbed and disrespected and discarded. Love means treating people with respect, I told my granddaughter. Love means not stealing from people. Love means being honest. You don't love us anymore, she said and hung up. I sat holding the dead phone, my heart breaking for that confused child who was being used as a weapon against me. But I didn't call back. I didn't apologize. I didn't give in. For the first time in my life, I was choosing my own dignity over their demands. The family meeting was Marcus's idea. He called it that specifically, a family meeting, like we were a functional family instead of a group of people with decades of unresolved resentment and financial abuse between us. We need to sit down and talk this out, he said when he called. Face to face. No lawyers, no police, just family. I agreed to meet at Sarah's house the following Sunday. I spent the week preparing, not just emotionally, but practically. I made copies of all my bank statements. I wrote out a timeline of the stolen money. I practiced what I wanted to say in my bathroom mirror. Most importantly, I decided what my boundaries would be. I would not accept promises. I would not accept payment plans. I would not accept explanations. I wanted my money back, all of it, within 30 days, or the legal case would proceed. Sunday arrived gray and cold, with the kind of drizzle that seems to seep into your bones. I took the bus to Sarah's house in Astoria, watching familiar neighborhoods pass by the window. This was the first time I had been to their house in over a year. The last time I was there, I had brought Christmas presents for the children and a check to help with their mortgage payment. The house looked exactly the same. Well-maintained, expensive, beautiful. The kind of house I had dreamed of owning when Sarah was little. The kind of house my money had helped buy. Sarah answered the door wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. She hugged me stiffly, like she was embracing a stranger. "Thanks for coming, Mom. I hope we can work this all out." The living room felt smaller with everyone there. Marcus sat in his leather recliner. The recliner I had bought him for Father's Day 2 years ago. Sarah sat on the couch. The children were there too, which felt manipulative, but I had expected it. "So," Marcus began, settling back in his chair like he was chairing a board meeting instead of addressing the woman he had robbed, "let's talk about how to move forward from this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. As if stealing $8,000 was just a miscommunication. "It's not a misunderstanding," I said. "You took my money without permission. That's theft." "Mom, please," Sarah said. "Can't we just focus on solutions instead of accusations?" "I have a solution. Marcus returns all my money within 30 days, or the legal case proceeds." Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. "Mom, that's not realistic. The money has already been invested. You can't just liquidate investments overnight without major losses. Then you should have thought about that before you invested my money without permission." "Look," he said, leaning forward with the expression of someone explaining something simple to a child. "I understand you're upset, but you have to see the bigger picture here. This Bitcoin investment is going to pay off huge. We're talking about turning your 8,000 into hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. And if it doesn't pay off, it will. But if it doesn't," he shrugged, "then we'll figure something else out." That shrug was like a match to gasoline. All the rage I had been suppressing for months flared up at once. "Figure something else out?" I said, standing up from the couch. "With whose money, Marcus? Because you've already stolen mine." "Mom, please don't raise your voice," Sarah said, glancing nervously at the children. But I was done whispering, done making myself small so everyone else could be comfortable with their terrible behavior. "I have been quiet for too long," I said, my voice carrying years of suppressed anger. "I have been understanding and patient and forgiving while you people have been bleeding me dry." I reached into my purse and pulled out the family portrait that had hung on my wall for 15 years. All of us together at Emma's 8th birthday party, smiling like we loved each other. "You want to know what this is worth now?" I said, holding up the photograph, and then I tore it in half. The sound seemed to echo in the quiet room. Emma gasped. Michael started crying. "This is what you've done to our family," I said, letting the torn pieces fall to the carpet. "You've destroyed it for money." "Mom, that's enough," Sarah said, standing up too. "You're scaring the children." "Good. Maybe they should be scared. Maybe they should see what happens when you treat people like ATM machines instead of human beings." I walked to the antique safe in the corner of the room. Another purchase my money had helped fund. Marcus kept important documents there, and I happened to know the combination because I had been there when he set it up. I turned the dial deliberately. Sarah's birthday, then Emma's, then Michael's. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were stacks of papers, investment documents, cryptocurrency wallet information, real estate deeds. I pulled out the Bitcoin folder. "This is where my money went," I said, holding up the papers. "Into this gambling addiction you call investing. That's private property," Marcus said, jumping up. "Bought with stolen money." I closed the safe and turned the dial, locking it again. Then I put the combination lock through the handle, a small padlock I had brought specifically for this moment. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. "I'm protecting what's left of my assets from further theft," I said, dropping the key to the padlock into my purse. "You can't lock our safe." "I just did." Marcus was turning red now, his composure finally cracking. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a crazy old woman. A crazy old woman who knows the difference between investing and stealing." I stood in their living room, facing the people who had taken everything from me. And for the first time in years, I felt powerful instead of powerless. "I will no longer buy your love with my life savings," I said clearly. "I will no longer sacrifice my security for your comfort. I will no longer accept disrespect disguised as family loyalty." I looked at each of them, Sarah avoiding my eyes, Marcus red-faced and furious, the children confused and frightened. "You can respect me, or you can lose me. Those are your only choices now." I walked toward the door, my legs steady despite my racing heart. "Mom, wait," Sarah called after me. "We can work this out. We can find a compromise." I stopped at the doorway and turned back. The compromise was $8,000 of my money. There won't be another one. I left them there, standing in their expensive living room, surrounded by things my money had bought, finally understanding that their personal ATM had permanently closed. The bus ride home felt like flying, but victory, I learned, has a short shelf life when you're dealing with people who have never accepted the word no. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I woke up to find my email inbox flooded with messages from relatives and family friends. The subject lines were all variations of the same theme. "Concerned about you. Please call me. Is everything okay?" Someone had been busy telling stories about me. I opened the first email, from my cousin Maria in Brooklyn. "Elena, I heard from Sarah that you're having some memory problems and maybe some paranoia about money. She's so worried about you. Have you considered seeing a doctor? There are wonderful treatments now for seniors with confusion issues. Please know that I'm here if you need to talk to someone objective about this family situation. Memory problems, paranoia, confusion issues." The next email was from Mrs. Chen, who went to my old church. "Dear Elena, your daughter called me yesterday, very upset. She says you're accusing your family of stealing from you and that you might need professional help. I want you to know that we're all praying for you and hoping you can get the support you need during this difficult time. Professional help." By the time I finished reading all the emails, the picture was clear. Sarah and Marcus had launched a campaign to paint me as a mentally declining old woman whose accusations couldn't be trusted. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, I got a call from Emma. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Grandma, everyone at school is saying Dad might go to jail because of you. They're saying you're trying to destroy our family because you hate us." My heart broke for her confusion. But more than that, I was furious that they were using this child as their messenger. "Emma, sweetie, that's not what's happening. Then why are you doing this? Why can't you just love us like you used to? I do love you. That's why I'm trying to fix what's broken." "But nothing was broken until you called the police." She hung up on me, leaving me holding the phone and wondering if I was destroying my relationship with my grandchildren in order to save my relationship with myself. That evening, Rosa knocked on my door with another covered dish and a concerned expression. "Elena, Mrs. Rodriguez from the 3rd floor told me some people have been asking questions about you. About whether you're, all there mentally." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions? Whether you forget things, whether you seem confused, whether maybe your family is right to be worried about you living alone." They were building a case, not just to shame me into dropping the legal complaint, but to have me declared incompetent so they could take control of what was left of my finances. "Rosa, do I seem confused to you?" She looked at me straight in the eye. "Elena, you seem like the most clear-headed you've been since I've known you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what would happen if they succeeded in convincing people I was mentally incompetent. I could lose my apartment, my independence, my right to make my own decisions. I could end up in some facility while they spent what remained of my money. The fear was paralyzing. Maybe I should just give up the legal case. Maybe I should apologize and try to go back to the way things were. But then I remembered something Rosa had said. "You seem like the most clear-headed you've been since I've known you." For the first time in years, I was thinking clearly. I was setting boundaries. I was protecting myself. I was acting like someone who believed she had value. Why would I want to go back to being a victim? The next morning, I called Mr. Rodriguez at the community center. "They're trying to discredit me," I told him. "Spreading rumors that I'm mentally incompetent. That's a common tactic in financial exploitation cases," he said calmly. "Abusers often try to paint their victims as unreliable or confused. That's actually more evidence in your favor. It shows a pattern of manipulation and control. What do? We document everything. Save those emails. Keep records of the phone calls. And Mrs. Martinez? We get you a mental competency evaluation from an independent doctor. When the court sees that you're perfectly lucid and capable, their whole narrative falls apart. 3 days later, I was sitting in a psychologist's office in Flushing, answering questions about my mental state, my memory, my decision-making abilities. Dr. Kim was thorough and kind, and after 2 hours of evaluation, she gave me the report that would change everything. Mrs. Martinez, you show no signs of cognitive impairment, memory loss, or mental incompetency. Your responses are thoughtful, your reasoning is sound, and your grasp of your financial situation is excellent. In fact, your decision to seek legal help shows exceptionally clear judgment. I walked out of that office with legal proof that I was exactly who I had always been, a smart, capable woman who had finally stopped letting other people take advantage of her kindness. But my family wasn't done with their manipulations yet. The final attempt came in the form of a surprise visit from Sarah and the children. I heard them climbing the stairs to my apartment on a Saturday morning, their voices echoing in the hallway. For a moment, my heart did that old familiar leap of hope. Maybe they had come to apologize. Maybe they had brought my money back. Maybe we could finally heal this terrible wound in our family. Sarah knocked softly on my door. When I opened it, she was holding a bouquet of flowers, yellow roses, my favorite. Behind her, Emma and Michael stood with wrapped presents. "Mom?" Sarah said, her voice soft and conciliatory. "We came to say we're sorry." They filed into my small apartment, and suddenly, the space felt full of possibility again. Emma hugged me tight, and Michael shyly handed me a drawing he had made. Our family holding hands under a rainbow. "We miss you, Grandma," Emma said. "We miss coming to visit. We miss your stories." My resolve wavered. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? My family, here, apologizing, missing me. Sarah sat on my couch and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I know we hurt you. I know you feel like we took advantage of your generosity. And maybe we did. We got so caught up in our own problems that we forgot to appreciate everything you've done for us." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is $500. It's all we can manage right now, but it's a start. Marcus is working on getting the rest of your money back from the Bitcoin investment. $500 out of 8,000. But it was something. It was an acknowledgement that they owed me. And Mom," Sarah continued, "we want you to know that the legal case is really hurting us. Marcus might lose his job if this goes to court. The kids are getting teased at school. Can't we handle this as a family?" I looked at the money in my hands, at the flowers on my table, at my grandchildren sitting on my couch like they belonged there. Maybe this was enough. Maybe I should take what I could get and try to rebuild our relationship. "All I want," I said slowly, "is to be treated with respect." "We will," Sarah said quickly. "We promise. No more taking money without asking. No more making decisions about your finances without involving you. We've learned our lesson." For a moment, sitting in my apartment with my family around me, the flowers filling the air with sweetness, I almost believed it was that simple. Then Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it and giggled. "Oh, it's Dad. He says to tell you the Bitcoin investment is finally starting to pay off and he'll have your money back soon." My blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't even there, but he was still lying to me through a 13-year-old girl. "Emma," I said carefully, "when did your dad tell you to say that?" "This morning when we were driving over. He said if you asked about the money, I should tell you it was coming back soon." Sarah's face went pale. "Emma, you weren't supposed to—" "Mom told me not to lie to you, but Dad said this was just— what did he call it? A little white lie to make you feel better. A little white lie. They had come here with flowers and presents and fake apologies, and they were still lying to me." I stood up slowly, my knees creaking, my heart hardening again. "All of you need to leave," I said. "Mom, wait. Now." "But Grandma, we brought you presents," Michael said, his lower lip trembling. I looked at those two confused children, and my heart broke for them. But I couldn't keep participating in my own destruction just to spare them from seeing their parents' true characters. Your parents will explain everything to you, I said, walking to the door and opening it. Goodbye. After they left, I sat in my apartment surrounded by their abandoned gifts. The flowers, the drawing, the envelope with $500. But instead of feeling happy about the partial payment, I felt disgusted that they had tried to buy my silence for so little. I called Mr. Rodriguez that afternoon. I want to proceed with the case, I told him. No more delays, no more negotiations. I want my money back, and I want them to face the legal consequences of what they did. Are you sure? Because once we file these papers, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family will probably never be the same. It's already not the same, I said. The only difference is that now I'm not pretending otherwise. The court summons was served to Marcus at his job the following Tuesday. Sarah called me that evening, hysterical. How could you do this to us? After we came to apologize? After we brought you money? You brought me lies, I said. You're still lying. We are not! Sarah, your daughter told me that Marcus instructed her to lie about the Bitcoin investment paying off, right in front of me, while you were apologizing. Silence. Mom, you're misunderstanding. I'm understanding perfectly. You came to manipulate me into dropping the case, and when that didn't work, you decided to use the children to guilt me into backing down. That's not... We really are sorry. If you were really sorry, you would have brought me $8,000 instead of $500 and a bunch of lies. I hung up on her. That night, I realized that grief has many faces. I wasn't just grieving the loss of my money or my sense of security. I was grieving the loss of my illusions about my family. I was grieving the mother I had been, who believed that love could overcome anything. I was grieving the grandmother I had been, who thought her sacrifices were appreciated instead of expected. But for the first time in months, I wasn't grieving the loss of myself. 6 weeks later, I got the call I had been waiting for. Mrs. Martinez? It was Mr. Rodriguez. I have good news. Marcus has agreed to a settlement. He'll pay back the full $8,000 plus interest, and in exchange, you'll drop the criminal charges and sign a no-contact agreement. Full restitution plus interest. A legal acknowledgement that he had stolen from me, and a no-contact agreement that would protect me from future manipulation. When? I asked. The money will be transferred to your new account by Friday. The agreement will be signed Monday morning at the courthouse. I hung up the phone and sat in my apartment for a long time, waiting for the feeling of victory to arrive. Instead, what I felt was something quieter and deeper. Relief. The relief of a person who had finally stood up to her bullies and discovered that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I booked myself a vacation. The Finger Lakes region was everything I had imagined and nothing I had expected. I took the Greyhound bus from Queens to Geneva, New York on a Tuesday morning in early October. The leaves were just beginning to turn, painting the rolling hills in shades of gold and crimson that took my breath away. I had booked myself a room at a small bed and breakfast right on Seneca Lake. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable with a view of the water. The owners, an elderly couple named Bill and Margaret, greeted me like I was a beloved aunt coming for a visit. First time to the Finger Lakes? Margaret asked as she helped me with my suitcase. First time anywhere in 30 years, I admitted. She paused in the hallway and looked at me with eyes that seemed to understand more than I had told her. Well then, she said, we'd better make it special. For the first time in decades, I had nowhere to be and nothing to do except please myself. I woke up when my body was ready to wake up, not when an alarm clock demanded it. I ate breakfast at a pace that allowed me to taste my food. I took long walks along the lake shore, breathing air that smelled like pine and possibility. On my second day there, I discovered a small quilt shop in the town of Geneva. I hadn't thought about quilting in years. It was something my mother had taught me when I was young, but I had abandoned it when life got too busy for such luxuries. The shop owner, a woman about my age named Janet, welcomed me in and showed me around like she had all the time in the world. Are you working on anything right now? She asked. I haven't quilted in probably 25 years, I admitted. I wouldn't even know where to start. Well, she said, pulling out a simple pattern. How about we start you with something small? A wall hanging, maybe. Something just for you, just for me. When was the last time I had made something just for me? I spent the rest of that afternoon choosing fabrics, deep purples and soft grays, colors I had always loved but never allowed myself to surround myself with. Janet taught me a basic pattern called flying geese, and I spent the evening in my bed and breakfast room, stitching by the light of the bedside lamp. There was something meditative about the rhythm of the needle, the precision required for each tiny stitch, the way individual pieces of fabric slowly transformed into something larger and more beautiful. On my third day, I joined a group of local quilters who met at the town library every Wednesday afternoon. These were women my age and older, with arthritic hands and bifocal glasses, who had been gathering to quilt together for 15 years. "What brought you to our little circle?" asked a woman named Dorothy as we worked on our individual projects. Without planning to, I found myself telling them my story. Not the whole story, that would have taken all afternoon, but the important parts. The financial theft, the legal case, the painful discovery that my family had been using me for years. "Oh, honey," said another woman named Ruth, looking up from her intricate star pattern. "That's terrible. But look at you now, taking a vacation, learning something new, taking care of yourself. That takes real courage." Courage? I had never thought of what I was doing as courageous. It felt more like survival. "My son went through a phase where he was always asking me for money," said Dorothy. "His business wasn't going well, and he had 3 kids to feed. I helped him for 2 years before I realized I wasn't helping him. I was enabling him. Hardest thing I ever did was saying no. But it was the best thing for both of us." "What happened?" I asked. "He figured it out, started making different choices. Our relationship got better because it wasn't built on him needing something from me all the time." I stayed with the quilting circle until the library closed, listening to these women share their own stories of difficult families and hard choices, and the slow, satisfying work of building a life that belonged to them. On my last morning in the Finger Lakes, I sat by the lake with my coffee and watched the sun rise over the water. The air was crisp and clear, and everything seemed possible. I thought about the woman who had boarded that bus in Queens 5 days earlier. Anxious, sad, still carrying the weight of other people's expectations and demands. That woman felt like a stranger to me now. The woman sitting by this lake had $8,000 in her bank account and a half-finished quilt in her suitcase, and plans to join a quilting circle when she got home. This woman had learned that she could survive her family's anger and manipulation. This woman had discovered that solitude was different from loneliness. This woman liked herself. Back in Queens, my apartment felt different, lighter somehow, even though nothing had physically changed. I hung up my half-finished quilt square on the wall where the family photos used to be, and it looked exactly right. Rosa knocked on my door that evening with congratulatory empanadas and genuine curiosity about my trip. "You look different," she said, settling into my armchair with her coffee. "Relaxed." "I feel different," I told her. "Like I've been carrying heavy bags for years and finally set them down." "And your family? Have they tried to contact you?" Sarah left a few voicemails while I was away. I deleted them without listening. The no-contact agreement means they can't keep calling to harass me, and I can't tell you how peaceful that feels. Rosa nodded approvingly. Sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones who make our lives the hardest. That weekend, I walked to the community center and signed up for their beginner's quilting class. It met every Saturday morning, and the instructor was a retired teacher named Mrs. Washington, who had infinite patience with fumbling fingers and crooked stitches. "Quilting is about more than making blankets," she told our small group of 6 women on the first day. "It's about taking scraps, things that might seem worthless by themselves, and turning them into something beautiful and useful and lasting." I thought about that as I worked on my first real quilt, a simple pattern called 9-patch that even a beginner could master. I was taking the scraps of my life, the loneliness, the betrayal, the financial stress, the legal battles, and slowly stitching them into something new. The other women in the class became my friends in a way I hadn't experienced since I was young. We shared stories and advice and laughter as we worked. When my arthritis flared up and made it hard to hold the needle, they showed me adaptive techniques. When I struggled with a difficult corner, they patiently helped me rework it. "You know what I love about quilting?" said Maria, a woman about my age who had started the class the same day I did. "Every mistake you make becomes part of the pattern. You can't really ruin it. You can only make it different. Different. Not ruined. Different." 3 months later, I finished my first quilt. A small wall hanging in shades of blue and white that reminded me of the lake where I had rediscovered myself. It wasn't perfect. The corners weren't perfectly square, and some of my stitches were uneven. But it was mine, made with my own hands, created for my own pleasure. I hung it in my bedroom where I could see it every morning when I woke up and every evening before I went to sleep. A daily reminder that I was capable of creating something beautiful. The seasons changed. Winter melted into spring. I took another small trip, this time to the Adirondacks, where I stayed in a cabin by a lake and spent a week reading books and taking photographs and eating meals whenever I felt hungry, instead of whenever the clock said it was time. I joined a senior hiking group that met every Tuesday to explore different trails around New York City. My stamina wasn't what it used to be, but neither were theirs, and we moved at a pace that allowed for conversation and frequent rest stops and genuine enjoyment of being outdoors. I started volunteering at the community center, helping other seniors navigate legal aid services and benefits applications. Mr. Rodriguez said I had a gift for listening without judgment and explaining complex processes in simple terms. "You should consider this as more than volunteer work," he told me one afternoon. "The city has paid positions for senior advocates, people who've been through the system themselves and can help others navigate it. A job. At 75 years old, a real job doing something meaningful." I applied for the position and was hired part-time. 3 days a week, I sat across from seniors who were dealing with financial exploitation, family manipulation, housing issues, medical debt. I listened to their stories and helped them understand their options and reminded them that they deserved to be treated with dignity. Every person I helped felt like I was healing something in myself, too. 1 year after that court summons had arrived, I was sitting in my apartment on a Saturday evening, working on my 4th quilt, an ambitious pattern called Log Cabin that required more skill than I'd thought I possessed. Rosa was visiting, as she did most Saturday evenings, and we were listening to salsa music from her phone while we worked on our respective projects. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Sarah's number. I almost didn't answer. The no-contact agreement had expired after 6 months, and she had tried calling a few times since then. I had ignored most of her attempts, but something about this evening, the music, the peaceful work, the sense of contentment I felt, made me curious rather than defensive. "Hello, Sarah." "Mom." Her voice was different, quieter, less demanding. "How are you?" "I'm well. How are the children?" They ask about you sometimes. Emma especially. She's 15 now, you know." I did know. I had sent her a birthday card, the first contact I'd initiated with any of them since the legal settlement. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot this past year, about everything that happened, about the things we did, about the way we treated you." I waited. I had learned the power of silence. "I started seeing a therapist," she continued, "after the legal stuff, when I realized how angry everyone was at me for what Marcus did, and she helped me understand that we weren't just taking your money. We were taking your dignity, your right to make your own choices." This was not what I had expected to hear. "I'm calling because I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not like that fake apology we brought to your apartment with the flowers and the guilt trip. I want to say I'm sorry, and I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what we did to you." I felt tears starting, but they weren't sad tears. "Thank you for saying that," I said. Can I ask how you are? Really, how you are?" I looked around my apartment, at my quilts on the walls, at the photographs from my trips, at the books I'd been reading, at the evidence of a life that belonged entirely to me. "I'm happy, Sarah. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. I'm glad," she said, and I could hear that she meant it. "You deserve to be happy." We talked for 20 more minutes. She told me about the children, about her job, about how she and Marcus had started marriage counseling to deal with his financial impulsiveness and dishonesty. She didn't ask me for anything. Not money, not visits, not immediate forgiveness. When we hung up, Rosa looked at me curiously. "How do you feel?" "Peaceful," I said, surprised by my own answer. "For the first time since this all started, I feel peaceful about them." "Do you think you'll see them again?" "Maybe. Someday. But only if it's healthy for me. Only if they can treat me with respect." "And if they can't?" I smiled and returned to my quilting. "Then I have this life I've built. And this life is pretty wonderful." 6 months later, I did see them again. Emma asked if she could visit. Just her. Not her parents, not her brother. She wanted to see my apartment and hear about my quilts and maybe learn to sew if I was willing to teach her. She came on a Saturday afternoon, tall and serious and looking so much like Sarah at that age that it took my breath away. But there was something different about her approach, something more mature and respectful than I remembered from her childhood. "Grandma," she said as I showed her my quilting corner, "I want you to know that I understand now that what my parents did was wrong. I mean, I think I've always known it was wrong, but I was scared to say so because I didn't want to take sides." "You were a child," I told her. "It wasn't your job to take sides. But I'm not a child anymore, and I want you to know that I think what you did, standing up for yourself, getting your money back, setting boundaries, I think that was brave." We spent the afternoon working on a simple quilting project together. She was a natural, with steady hands and good attention to detail. As we stitched, she told me about school, about her plans for college, about her complicated feelings toward her parents. "I love them," she said, "but I don't always like how they act." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," I assured her. Love and approval are two different things. When she left that evening, she hugged me tight and whispered, "I missed you so much, Grandma." "I missed you too, sweetheart." But the difference was that now I could miss her without sacrificing myself to see her. I could love her without accepting disrespect from her parents. I could be her grandmother without being their victim. 2 years after that court summons changed my life, I was sitting on a park bench in Flushing Meadows, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My latest quilt, a complex star pattern that had taken me 8 months to complete, was draped across my lap, ready to be delivered to the senior center where it would be raffled to raise money for their legal aid program. Rosa sat beside me, as she often did on our evening walks through the neighborhood. We had become those women you see in parks sometimes, close friends of a certain age who have learned that the best conversations happen when you're not looking directly at each other. "Elena," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret it? Fighting back the way you did? Losing your family relationships?" I considered her question carefully. "I didn't lose my family relationships," I said finally. "I lost my family dysfunction, the people who truly loved me. Like Emma, they found their way back when they were ready. The people who only wanted to use me, well, I'm better off without them." "And the loneliness?" "Because I know you were afraid of being alone," I smiled, watching a couple of teenagers play frisbee in the distance, their laughter carrying on the evening air. "I learned the difference between being alone and being lonely," I said. "I was lonely when I was surrounded by people who didn't value me. Now I'm alone sometimes. But I'm not lonely. I have friends who respect me. I have work that fulfills me. I have hobbies that bring me joy. Most importantly, I have myself, and I like who I am." "That's beautiful," Rosa said. "It's taken me 77 years to figure it out, but better late than never, right?" We sat in comfortable silence as the sky deepened to purple and the first stars appeared. Soon it would be time to walk home, to make dinner, to continue the simple, satisfying routine of a life lived on my own terms. Before we left the bench, I pulled out my phone and took a selfie, something I had never done before last year, but had started enjoying. Rosa laughed and leaned into the frame, and we both smiled genuinely into the camera. Later that night, I would post the picture on the Facebook account Emma had helped me set up, with a caption about friendship and second chapters and the beauty of autumn evenings. I would get comments from my quilting friends and hiking buddies and fellow volunteers, people who knew me as I am now rather than as I used to be, but in that moment, sitting on the bench with my friend, my finished quilt, and my hard-won piece, I just felt grateful. Grateful for the courage I had found when I thought I had none left. Grateful for the legal aid lawyer who had believed my story when my own family didn't. Grateful for the community of women who had taught me that it's never too late to learn something new. Grateful for Rosa, who had shown me that friendship could be simple and honest and free of demands. Grateful even for that court summons that had terrified me so much 2 years ago, because it had forced me to stop being a victim and start being my own advocate. The old Elena would have been horrified to find herself alone at 77. This Elena, the one sitting on the park bench, watching the stars come out, planning her next small adventure, couldn't imagine being anyone else. As we walked home through the familiar streets of Queen, Rosa asked me one more question. What would you say to someone going through what you went through? Someone who feels trapped by family obligation and doesn't know how to break free? I thought about it as we navigated the cracked sidewalks and listened to the multilingual conversations spilling from apartment windows and storefronts. I would tell them that love isn't supposed to hurt, I said finally. Real love doesn't demand your dignity as payment. Real love doesn't steal from you or lie to you or use your children to manipulate you. If someone claims to love you but treats you terribly, what they love is what you can do for them, not who you are. And if they're afraid of being alone, I would tell them that being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Being discarded and disrespected and financially abused while surrounded by people who claim to love you, that's worse. Much worse. We reached my building and stopped at the bottom of the stairs. You know what the best part is? I added. When you finally stand up for yourself, when you finally say enough, you discover who you really are underneath all those years of trying to please everyone else. And usually that person is pretty wonderful. Rosa hugged me goodnight and headed to her own building next door. I climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, no longer seeing the narrow hallways and thin walls as evidence of my diminished circumstances. They were evidence of my independence. Evidence that I could take care of myself. Evidence that I had survived. Inside my apartment, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my favorite chair to work on my latest quilting project. A memory quilt made from scraps of fabric that held personal meaning, a piece from my mother's old apron, a scrap from Sarah's childhood dress, a fragment from the curtains of our old house in Brooklyn. Each piece told a story, but together they were creating something new, something that honored the past without being trapped by it, something beautiful that belonged entirely to me. As I stitched in the quiet of my apartment, with only the distant sounds of the city for company, I thought about gratitude. Real gratitude, not the kind that Marcus had tried to teach me through deprivation and manipulation. I was grateful for the family I had been born into, even though they had disappointed me. They had taught me resilience, even if that hadn't been their intention. I was grateful for the years of sacrifice, because they had proven to me that I was capable of extraordinary love, even when it wasn't returned. I was grateful for the financial exploitation, because it had forced me to develop a backbone I didn't know I possessed. I was grateful for the loneliness, because it had taught me the difference between being loved and being needed. Most of all, I was grateful for the courage to start over at 75, to discover that it's never too late to have boundaries, to make friends, to try new things, to build a life that reflects your values instead of other people's expectations. The quilt in my lap was taking shape slowly, stitch by careful stitch. Like my life, it would never be perfect, but it would be beautiful. It would be useful. It would be mine. And that, I had learned, was enough. In fact, it was everything. So let me ask you something now, as I finish this story that I never thought I would have the courage to tell. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship, with family, with friends, with anyone, where love felt more like obligation than joy? Where you gave and gave until there was nothing left, but it never seemed to be enough? Please tell me in the comments below. I've learned that sharing our stories is how we find out we're not alone, and sometimes that's the first step toward finding our way back to ourselves. If this story helped you in any way, would you like this video and subscribe? It helps more people find these stories, and maybe someone out there needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your life. Thank you for listening to my heart. Thank you for witnessing my journey. And remember, you are worth so much more than you've been taught to believe.